well, I've seen some publications that are suggesting that 23% protein in calf milk replacer is got optimum. I've been trying to look for some older research to explain why this is. Have you got any research on this?
Well, no, I'm not sure there is very much, because this is one of these legacy issues you find in a lot of industries and science. Like if you look at body temperature, which I think would be very straightforward to test. A guy, I think his name was Carl Wunderlich, did the work in the 1850s, I should say, and he said it was 37 degrees. Now, body temperature changes during the day, and women are not the same as men, and when you have more muscle mass as we do now, and you've less inflammation, your body temperature declines. Well, he was wrong by 1 degree Fahrenheit, but all the books say 37 degrees Celsius. So it's probably closer to 36 and a half. And then I do a bit of beekeeping, as you know, and I'm going to do an exam in April. And Varroa mite, all the books suggest that Varroa sucks the hemolymph, or the blood of the bee, and that's what causes the problems. But a great communicator and researcher from Cornell University, Samuel Ramsey, he first looked at a proper translation of some Russian work, and realized that the translation was incorrect, and he's worked out that it's the fat body, or the liver, effectively, of the bee that's damaged. So I'm going to do this exam, and I don't know what to put down. Do I put down what read now, or what the books say? It's kind of one of those dilemmas. So I started in calf milk in 1988, and up to that time we had mountains of skim in the EU, and we only had home for about 20% of it. So there was a huge subsidy to put skim milk powder into calf milk. Well, you had to put in 60%. Yeah, if you put in 59, you got nothing. You had to put in 60%. And if you do the maths on 60%, it came out at 23%. So really, in Europe, there was no one really doing any work on what 22 or 21 and 20 was like, because the cost of making those products was far more expensive than making a 23. So, and of course, all the whey-based, or zero as we call them, so they had zero skims. You had 60 or zero. The zero products all were at 23 if they could afford to do it, because they couldn't be less, because they were seen as inferior products. So they had to have the same crude protein level. So that's really where it comes from.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, what you're saying is that the 23% is based on the need to use up the skim milk, and not for the calf's requirement, and that isn't relevant anymore because we don't have subsidies on that.
Well, yeah, it was.
So
yeah,
yeah, okay.
That's kind of it. I mean, the subsidy, let's say, determined the protein content. And when I joined the industry in 1989, my first job, because skim mountain had gone, so my first job was because they changed ruling and said you can add any level of skim and you get a pro rata subsidy. So we did 60s, 50s, 45s, 40s, and we pitched it around 40, 45, was where most people were at, which is 20, 21%. And that's what was most effective. And then the following year we had a skim mountain again, it went back up to 50, 55, and then it dropped it, and right throughout the 90s it oscillated. But there was whey-based powders already established at that stage, and they always stayed at the 23 because they needed to. Really, but they were very small portion of the market. And again, 20% of the skim went into food. 20% of it went into third world markets, and it was hugely subsidized. And the rest of the skim went into the calf milk industry. And we used to have to add starch to denature it, and then so the inspectors could then test skim and see that if it had been denatured, they'd just drop a bit of calcium into it, and it would change the color of the product blue. They know it had been subsidized, so it can go back into the food chain. And again, in 60% skim, you had 18% fat, which had to be cold dried with whey, which gave you about 96% of the product. And you had minerals and vitamins from the denaturing product. So that was your 100%. So it would have been very coincidental if the the level that they picked to ram the skim in to get rid of it was the actual level that the calf required. It had nothing to do with calf futures. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So why do the US use a 2020?
Well, again, they didn't have the skim mountain, so they were looking at things completely different. What was the cost of the ingredients? They didn't have subsidies, so I'm not saying their levels are right, because their ways of measuring protein and the ways or not measuring the protein, but the ways of looking at protein sources are very, very different. But they didn't have this subsidy issue, which was this legacy issue. And again, with the VIA guys, because they're using so much milk, they would make a 60% skim and then make zeros and then blend the two to get back to a 20% protein, which is what their calves wanted, or 19% even. So that's why the level without the subsidy, doesn't need to be 23.
Yeah. Okay. And should we be using sort of US nutritional figures? Should we be looking at that, or?
Well, no, I think ultimately there's so many differences between the way the products are made, processed, the ingredients used, and the additives used, and the fats used. I think we really have to look at the European business. It's a much bigger milk replacer market, much wider range of milk ingredients. And so we looked at what we do, what we can get in Europe. That's the important thing. It's not to look over our shoulders in America, but we have to acknowledge again that they didn't have the subsidy issue, so that their proteins are probably closer to where they need to be.
Yeah. Okay. And from your experience, what would you suggest is the optimum protein percentage?
Again, it's about not the protein, but it's about the amino acids, and the only way to do that is use low heat milk products like skim milk, buttermilk, whey ingredients. Because if you can protect the amino acids there and the proteins, then you can top them up with some artificial amino acids. But ultimately, that gives you more space in the diet then for other things like health promoting ingredients, like energy, and also the calf is spending less energy excreting excess crude protein, which costs her energy, which she could be using for health or for growth. So, I think getting the protein right is really important, particularly in this age too, and in climate change as well. It's really critical that we don't overfeed it for the calf or the environment or for the farmer.
Yeah, that makes sense.